Ever feel like a complete fraud, just waiting for everyone to realize you have no idea what you're doing? You're not alone. And it's not because you're failing, it's because you've fallen for the world's biggest optical illusion. We've all been there, standing in a room, perhaps at a high stakes meeting, a prestigious dinner, or even just a casual gathering of people who seem to have their lives figured out. And suddenly, a cold shiver runs down your spine. It's the sudden, jarring realization that you don't actually belong here. You look around at the composed faces and the sharp suits, listening to the confident cadence of their voices, and you feel like a child who wandered onto a movie set and was accidentally handed a script for the lead role. This is the pilot in the cardboard cockpit phase of the human experience. Imagine, for a second, a man sitting in the cockpit of a massive commercial airliner. He's wearing the crisp white shirt, the gold-braided epaulets, and the authoritative hat. He leans into the microphone and makes a sunny, calm announcement to the passengers about the weather in Chicago and the Chicago altitude. To everyone behind that closed door, he is the embodiment of competence. He is the person who knows exactly how to handle a bird strike or a sudden drop in cabin pressure. But inside the cockpit, our pilot is sweating. He looks at the dizzying array of switches, dials, and glowing screens, and he realizes with a jolt of pure terror that he has no idea how to even start the engines. To him, the cockpit isn't a marvel of engineering. It feels like it's made of painted cardboard. He feels like a fraud, an actor who is one wrong button away from being exposed as a total amateur. He is convinced that a real pilot, someone who actually deserves the uniform, would be sitting there in total zen-like peace, instinctively knowing every circuit. The tragedy of this feeling is how lonely it makes us. We become convinced that we are uniquely unqualified. We look at the CEOs, the surgeons, the professors, and the successful entrepreneurs, and we assume their uniforms match their internal reality. We think that because we can feel our own hands shaking, and because we know how much we struggled just to get out of bed or answer a difficult email, we must be the only ones faking it. We are the only ones wearing the cardboard hat. When we are stuck in this mindset, it feels safer, mercifully easier even, simply not to try. We pass up the promotion, we stay silent during the brainstorm, or we avoid the person we're attracted to, all because we want to avoid the crash. We tell ourselves that it's better to stay on the ground than to risk everyone seeing that we don't know how to fly. But here's the thing we miss while we're staring at our own shaking hands. Every single person in that cabin is also sitting in a cockpit they didn't quite feel ready for. The crippling thought that people like us aren't meant for triumph is a ghost story we tell ourselves. We see our own gotchness, our own dull moments, and our own crude private thoughts as evidence of our inadequacy. We compare our messy, unedited behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's polished, Final Cut trailer. In this first stage of our journey, we have to acknowledge this feeling without letting it drive the plane. We have to admit that the pilot we're so afraid of being is actually the only kind of pilot there is. Someone who showed up, put on the uniform, and is doing their best to figure out the controls in real time. The cockpit might feel like cardboard sometimes, but that doesn't mean you aren't flying. To understand why we feel like such monumental frauds, we have to look back at where our definition of competence actually began. For most of us, that journey starts in the living room of our childhood home, staring up at the giants we called parents. When you are 4 years old, the gap between you and an adult isn't just a matter of height, it's a matter of magic. To a child, a parent is a being of inexplicable, godlike power. They possess the mysterious ability to drive a car through chaotic traffic while having a conversation, to talk to a plumber about pipes and pressure, and to decide exactly when the lights go out. They travel to places called the office and return with stories of colleagues and meetings. Concepts that feel as distant and sophisticated as a mission to Mars. As children, we start life with a very strong, very skewed impression that real people, the ones who run the world, are a completely different species than we are. We see our own lives for what they are. A messy collection of pouncing on the sofa, obsessing over a specific brand of chocolate, and crying because a toy broke. We compare our world of cartoons and sticky fingers to the adult world of sitting at a table for hours, drinking bitter liquids that taste like rusty metal, and discussing serious things. Because we cannot imagine our mother ever being our age, unable to tie her shoes or afraid of the dark, we create a mental divide. We decide that there is a us, the messy, impulsive, ignorant children, and a them, the calm, capable, knowing adults. We grow up, we get the degrees, we land the jobs, and we even become parents ourselves. But inside, that 4-year-old is still there, looking around for the real adults to walk into the room and take over. The problem is that this childhood experience dovetails perfectly with a basic structural flaw in the human condition: the inside-outside trap. We know ourselves from the inside, but we only know others from the outside. Every single second of your day, you are a captive audience to your own internal monologue. You are acutely aware of every stutter in your thoughts, every surge of anxiety, every moment you felt stupid for not understanding a joke, and every weird, intrusive thought that popped into your head while you were brushing your teeth. You see the raw footage of your life, the bloopers, the deleted scenes, and the parts that should have stayed on the cutting room floor. But when you look at your boss, your mentor, or even a successful stranger on the street, you only see the edited version. You see the polished surface they choose to show the world. You see the firm handshake, the clear voice, and the decisive nod. You don't see them staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. wondering if they're about to be fired. You don't see them accidentally tripping on the rug when no one is looking or feeling deeply insecure about their thinning hair. Because we have a front row seat to our own chaos and only a distant view of everyone else's order, we conclude that we are the freaks. We decide that the status gap we felt as children was never actually bridged. We feel like we've sneaked into the adult world through a back door, wearing a costume, while everyone else was invited through the front because they actually belonged there. We fail to realize that the competent adults we admired were just as muddled and fretful as we were. They were just better at hiding it, or perhaps they were just as busy staring at their own cardboard cockpits as we are now. Understanding that this divide is a trick of perspective is the first step toward realizing that you aren't an imposter. You're just a human who finally got a look at the controls. The truth is, while everyone else is hiding their chaos behind a polished mask, you can actually start mastering yours. If you're tired of feeling like the only one who hasn't figured it out, it's time to bridge that gap between who you are and who you want to be. Grab my ebook, 30 Days to a Better You. It's not about becoming a perfect, robotic version of yourself. It's a practical guide to building the habits and mindset that turn your inner doubts into your greatest strengths. Start your journey today at the link below and stop waiting to feel ready. The Great Illusion, the one that keeps us awake at night questioning our right to exist in professional spaces, is fueled by a data imbalance so massive it's almost comical. We are victims of a perspective trap that we rarely stop to analyze. We live with the fundamental reality that we know ourselves from the inside, but we only know everyone else from the outside. Think about the sheer volume of information you have about your own internal life. You are a 24/7 witness to the uncut version of your existence. You feel every flicker of doubt before you speak. You remember the embarrassing thing you said 3 years ago at a Christmas party. You are intimately acquainted with your own lazy impulses, your secret vanities, and the way your stomach flips when you receive an unexpected email from your boss. You are aware of your freakish side, the weird habits, the irrational fears, and the moments where you feel like a clumsy, uncoordinated mess of a human being. Now compare that to what you know about the person sitting across from you in a meeting. You see a calm exterior. You see someone who has brushed their hair, chosen a coordinated outfit, and is presenting a curated set of ideas. You hear their edited speech, the words they've chosen to share, likely after filtering out the 3 stupid things they almost said but didn't. Because we have access to our own messy internal data and only their polished external data, we make a catastrophic logical error. We assume the outside reflects the inside. We look at a CEO giving a keynote speech and we think, they are not like me. We assume that because their voice isn't shaking, their mind must be a serene lake of confidence. We imagine that their thoughts are as orderly as their PowerPoint slides. Meanwhile, we feel like a chaotic storm of insecurities. We conclude that we are isolated at the more freakish and revolting end of human nature, while they are part of a superior, more solid class of humanity. But this is like comparing your own messy kitchen, complete with dirty dishes in the sink and crumbs on the floor, to a professional photograph of a kitchen in a high-end magazine. You know the magazine kitchen is a lie. You know there's a photographer just out of frame holding a light, and that someone spent 3 hours cleaning that counter for a single shot. Yet, when it comes to people, we forget that everyone else is also tidying up before they step out the door. We fail to imagine that the impressive person we're intimidated by is, at this very moment, likely plagued by a specific regret they can't let go of. They might have a secret obsession that they think makes them weird. They might be terrified that their latest project is a failure. They might be worrying about a mole on their back or feeling guilty about a fight they had with their spouse. We are essentially comparing our behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's greatest hits trailer. Of course we feel like imposters. If you only saw the blooper reel of your own life, you'd never think you were the hero of the story either. The breakthrough comes when we realize that our inner frailties are not what separate us from the greats. They are exactly what connect us to them. The anxiety you feel isn't a sign that you don't belong. It's a universal feature of the human mental hardware. We aren't uniquely flawed. We are just uniquely aware of our own flaws, while being blissfully, dangerously ignorant of everyone else's. Once you accept that the polished surface of others is a necessary social fiction, the world becomes a much less intimidating place. You stop looking for a real adult and start realizing that everyone is just another version of you, trying their best to keep the dishes out of the shot. To truly dismantle the wall of imposter syndrome, we have to perform a humanizing leap of faith. This isn't a leap into the unknown, but rather a leap into the known. The quiet admission that the minds of the people we admire must work in much the same messy, wayward way as our own. This is where we turn to the 16th century philosopher Michel de Montaigne for a bit of grounded wisdom. Montaigne was a man who lived among the elite, yet he spent a significant amount of time reflecting on the most basic aspects of human existence. He famously wrote, in plain and unadorned French, that kings and philosophers shit, and so do ladies. At first glance, it sounds like a crude joke, a bit of locker room humor from the Renaissance. But Montaigne's point was profoundly psychological. He realized that because we never see the distinguished types, the monarchs, the high priests, the brilliant thinkers, engaged in their most basic, desperate bodily functions, we build up a subconscious belief that they are fundamentally different from us. We are intimately, sometimes painfully, aware of our own digestive struggles, our crude bowels, and our physical vulnerabilities. Because we see our own grossness and never see theirs, we conclude that we are low and they are high. We assume that if someone like us, with our desperate bowels and awkward bodies, were to sit on a throne or lead a boardroom, we would be nothing but pretenders. Montaigne invites us to use our imagination to close this gap. He wants us to mentally place that intimidating CEO or that world-class intellectual on a toilet. It sounds silly, but it is a powerful equalizer. If they must squat and strain just as we do, then the biological hardware is identical. And if the hardware is identical, why would the software, the mind, be any different? We can take Montaigne's logic and push it into the psychological arena. Just as we can be certain that the most powerful person you know has had a stomachache, we can be equally certain that they are racked by self-doubt. We don't need to know the specific details of their anxieties to know that they exist. We might not know what they regret, but we can be sure there are agonizing feelings of some kind tucked away in their past. We might not know their specific insecurities, but we can be certain they have felt the sting of inadequacy. This leap of faith requires us to accept that the shameful, unmentionable sides of our nature, the weird, intrusive thoughts, the moments of cowardice, the sexual kinks, the irrational tempers, have a corollary in every single human being. Vulnerabilities and compulsions are not a curse that descended only upon you. They are universal features of the human mental equipment. When we fail to make this leap, we remain underconfident, not just about our bodies, but about our souls. We look at the big figures, the startup entrepreneurs who just went public, the polished news presenters, the formidable corporate lawyers, and we think they are made of different stuff. We think they don't buckle under pressure, that they never look back on their decisions with burning shame, or that they never bump into doors in the dark. But they do. No less than the act of shitting, these mental frailties are what make us part of the same tribe. The moment you realize that the person across from you is likely just as disturbed or uncertain as you are, the pedestal begins to crumble. You realize that you aren't an imposter in a world of giants. You're a human in a world of humans. The leap of faith is simply the courage to believe that your internal chaos is the standard, not the exception. Once you humanize the world, success no longer feels like a gated community. It feels like a room you finally realized you have the key to. The final step in our journey isn't about changing who you are. It's about changing how you see everyone else. Once you've accepted that the cardboard cockpit is a universal experience, and that even the most exalted figures share your most basic human messiness, you arrive at a profound destination. The realization that your inner frailties do not disqualify you from greatness. In fact, they are your membership card to the human race. Returning to the world as an equal means moving through life with a saner, more grounded sense of reality. When you encounter a stranger now, whether it's a high-powered executive, a famous artist, or a formidable judge, you aren't really encountering a stranger. You are encountering someone who, despite the crisp suit or the impressive title, is built from the exact same psychological architecture as you. Behind that surface evidence of total control, there is a person who has felt the same cold prickle of fear, the same sting of embarrassment, and the same quiet worry that they might not be enough. This shift in perspective is the ultimate antidote to the imposter syndrome. If everyone is winging it, then winging it is simply the standard operating procedure for the entire species. When you find yourself in a position of responsibility or prestige, you no longer have to feel like a thief who broke in through the window. You can look around the room and realize that if you were in their roles, you wouldn't be an imposter. You would simply be normal. Think about the liberation that comes with this. When we stop holding ourselves to an impossible standard of perfect competence that doesn't actually exist in nature, we free up an enormous amount of mental energy. Instead of spending 80% of our brain power trying to hide our anxieties and maintain a polished facade, we can use that energy to actually do the work, solve the problems, and connect with people. We can admit when we don't know something without fearing that the fraud police will burst through the door. We can ask for help, not as a sign of weakness, but as a recognition that we are all navigating the same muddled, fretful experience together. Humanizing the world means that nothing fundamental stands between you and the possibility of success. The gatekeepers you were so afraid of aren't actually gatekeepers. They are just other people who happen to get there a little earlier, likely feeling just as surprised by their own success as you might feel by yours. The imposter is a ghost that vanishes the moment you turn on the lights and see that everyone else in the room is also just a human being, trying to figure out the controls while the plane is already in the air. As you step forward into your professional and personal challenges, carry this leap of faith with you. Remind yourself of Montaigne's kings and philosophers. Remember that the shameful and unmentionable parts of you are shared by every person you've ever been intimidated by. Your vulnerabilities don't cut you off from responsibility or fulfillment. They are the very things that make your triumphs meaningful. You belong in the room, not because you are perfect, but because you are human. And in this world, that is the only qualification that truly matters. You are no longer an actor in a uniform. You are a pilot, messy and uncertain, flying a plane alongside billions of others who are doing exactly the same thing. And that is more than enough.